It was just past sunrise when the sound of chopper blades cut through the quiet air above my ranch. At first, I thought it was just another routine flyover from the local rescue teams who sometimes use the open fields for training drills. But this morning felt different. The helicopters were flying low, their shadows sweeping across the barn and the pastures. And they weren't alone for long. From the edge of the property, I spotted a small convoy of trucks rolling in, dust trailing. Behind them? At first glance, they looked official. Flashing lights, uniforms, radios. But something about them didn't sit right. Their badges didn't match any department I knew. And their so-called security vehicles were nothing more than civilian pickups painted in dark colors with stick-on decals. These were not real law enforcement. They were fake HOA cops. The kind who thought the rules of a neighborhood association applied to the entire countryside. They pulled up near my fence line, scanning the skies with binoculars, their voices sharp and urgent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They thought the helicopters were trespassing on community airspace, something that doesn't even exist. Then, before I could react, one of them shouted a command and the sound of gunfire erupted. I froze. The rescue helicopters weren't. Just on a random route, they were part of a federal emergency mission. Every second they were delayed could cost lives. I yelled for them to stop, but my voice was drowned out by the chaos. Through the dust and ringing in my ears, I saw one of the pilots banking hard to avoid the gunfire, the rotor wash kicking up dirt. And that's when I realized, if these men didn't stop immediately, they weren't just breaking the law. They were about to start something far bigger than they could possibly control. The fake HOA cops weren't from anywhere around here. I'd lived on this ranch for over 20 years, and I knew every deputy, every fire crew, every rescue pilot by name. These guys were strangers. They carried themselves like they were in charge, barking orders into cheap walkie-talkies. But their gear looked like something bought online. No real agency patches, no standard-issue sidearms, just mismatched tactical vests and a lot of attitude. I stayed low behind the fence line, trying to figure out how they even knew to be here this morning. The rescue helicopters weren't scheduled. They were responding to a sudden federal call about a search and recovery operation in the nearby hills. Somehow, these imposters had shown up just minutes before the first rotor touched our airspace. It felt too perfectly timed to be an accident. One of them, a tall man with a sunburned face and mirrored sunglasses, seemed to be in charge. He kept pointing toward the sky, shouting about restricted zones and violations. His voice carried the kind of false authority that could convince someone who didn't know better. The others followed his lead, acting like they had a right to enforce whatever bizarre rules they'd made up. I thought about going straight to the barn to grab my long-range radio, maybe warn the pilots directly. But the way these guys were moving, scanning every corner like they owned the place, I knew they'd spot me. Instead, I edged closer, trying to pick up more of their conversation. That's when I heard it, a mention of orders from above. Not from the sheriff, not from the county. Something else entirely. The tone in his voice wasn't casual. It was almost nervous, like he knew exactly who those helicopters belonged to, and still chose to engage. The choppers were circling back now, louder than before, and I could feel the tension in the air, tightening with each beat of the blades. Whatever was about to happen next, it wasn't going to be small. The lead helicopter banked sharply, its nose tilting toward the east as if preparing for another pass over my ranch. The sun glinted off its fuselage, and I caught a glimpse of a rescue emblem I recognized from federal disaster units. That confirmed it. This was an official mission. Yet the fake HOA cops didn't flinch. If anything, they seemed more determined, spreading out along my fence line like they were forming a blockade. From where I stood, I could see one of them setting up what looked like a spotting scope, not just binoculars. He kept calling out positions, tracking each chopper's path like it was some kind of military drill. I started wondering if these men were really just delusional locals or something else entirely. They acted too organized to be random troublemakers. Meanwhile, my ranch hand, Caleb, slipped up beside me, crouching low in the tall grass. His eyes were wide, and his voice was barely above a whisper. He'd been in town earlier that morning and overheard something strange at the feed store, a couple of unfamiliar men talking about grounding federal birds before they reached the ridge. At the time, he thought it was just talk. But now it was clear they meant every word. The rescue helicopters weren't alone up there either. In the distance, a smaller, faster aircraft circled like it was monitoring the situation. It didn't have the same markings, and I couldn't tell if it was friend or foe. The fake cops glanced at it nervously but didn't break formation. Down below, one of the imposters began waving his arms, signaling to the others. I couldn't hear what he said over the rotors, but his urgency was clear. Caleb and I exchanged a look. Whatever they were about to do next was going to change everything. The question was, were we about to witness a bluff or the first move in something far more dangerous? The helicopters tightened their formation, dipping lower as if preparing to land or make an urgent drop. The fake HOA cops scrambled, shouting commands that cut through the roar of the blades, but the men in the air ignored them, or maybe didn't even hear. The tension on the ground was thick enough to taste. Every second felt like the calm before a storm nobody wanted but couldn't avoid. Caleb nudged me, eyes scanning the horizon. "They're not messing around," he whispered, voice tight. "Those guys are ready to do something crazy." I nodded, heart pounding. We'd never seen anything like this before, an armed group posing as local law enforcement taking on federal rescue teams. It was like a nightmare come to life, and it was unfolding right over my land. Suddenly, the tall man with the mirrored shades barked an order, and a few of the fake cops fanned out, pulling what looked like stun guns or tasers from their gear. Their focus was locked on the helicopters, but also on anyone near them who might interfere. I ducked instinctively behind the fence post, trying to keep low and stay out of sight. The lead helicopter dipped sharply, sending a gust of wind that rattled the loose boards on the barn. I could see the pilot's face now, grim and focused, aware of the danger but determined to complete the mission. The smaller, shadowy aircraft circled closer, and the fake cops suddenly looked even more on edge, their nervous glances shifting between the sky and each other. A sudden crack of gunfire echoed, sharp and close. My heart skipped. It wasn't clear who fired first, but the moment shattered the fragile balance of the standoff. The helicopters veered sharply, dust and debris kicking up from the dry ground, and the imposters surged forward like they were trying to force a confrontation. The ranch that had been peaceful just minutes before was now the stage for a showdown none of us could have predicted. And as the sun climbed higher, the question wasn't just who would win, it was if anyone would walk away at all. Just as the tension hit a breaking point, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from an unknown number that made my blood run cold. It wasn't a warning or a threat, but a chilling piece of information. Those HOA cops aren't who you think. They're part of a rogue militia hired to stop the federal mission at all costs. I blinked, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of what I'd just read. This wasn't some local turf war anymore. The fake lawmen were backed by something bigger, darker. It explained their surprising coordination, their willingness to open fire, and the cryptic orders from above I'd overheard earlier. Meanwhile, the rescue helicopters circled closer, trying to find a safe place to land without coming under fire. The smaller aircraft I'd seen before now dropped low, revealing itself as a surveillance drone, federal, judging by the markings. Its presence was supposed to tip the balance in favor of the rescue teams, but the imposters didn't seem Phased on the ground, Caleb was yelling for me to move, eyes wide as he spotted a pickup speeding toward the ranch entrance, filled with more armed men. I realized this was no longer a simple standoff. It was a full-scale ambush. Suddenly, the tall man with the mirrored glasses pulled out a device and clicked it twice. Moments later, several radio towers in the distance went silent. Communications were jammed. The rescue crews were cut off. The sun blazed overhead, heat mixing with adrenaline and fear. What had started as a strange encounter with fake HOA cops had spiraled into a dangerous game involving federal missions, armed militias, and a fight for control over this quiet stretch of land. I looked toward the helicopters, circling like predators, the imposters closing in, and knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger and far more dangerous than anyone had bargained for. As the radio silence stretched on, the rescue helicopters circled lower, trying to find a way through the no-fly zone the fake HOA cops had claimed. The imposters tightened their grip on the ranch, but just when it seemed like they might force a landing, or worse, the unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a convoy of federal agents stormed through the far gate, their badges gleaming in the harsh sunlight. These were the real deal, trained, armed, and ready to end the chaos. They moved fast, pushing the rogue militia back, their presence shifting the balance in an instant. The fake cops looked stunned, caught between fighting and retreating. On the radio, the pilots finally broke through the jamming, confirming their federal status and mission: a critical search and rescue operation for missing hikers in the nearby hills. Their frustration with the delay was clear, but so was their relief to have backup. Caleb and I stayed low, watching as the federal agents took control, cuffing the imposters and securing the area. The helicopters touched down safely, medics rushing out to prepare for the emergency ahead. For a moment, the tension lifted, replaced by a cautious hope. But just as I was catching my breath, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video, grainy, shaky footage showing someone planting explosives along a remote trail where the hikers were believed to be stranded. The caption read, "If the feds come, they won't get far." I looked at Caleb, then back at the helicopters preparing to take off again. The battle over my ranch was only part of a larger threat, one that went beyond fake cops or rogue militias. Whatever was behind this had deeper roots and darker plans, and now I was caught right in the middle of it. The sun set low, shadows stretching over the land. And I knew this story was far from over. After the federal agents secured the ranch, and the fake HOA cops were taken into custody, the immediate danger finally eased. The rescue helicopters took off once again, this time unchallenged, heading toward their mission with renewed urgency. Caleb and I watched as the dust settled, realizing how close we'd come to a disaster none of us saw coming. The phone video of the explosives planted on the trail was handed over to the authorities, and the search and rescue team altered their plans to avoid the danger. It was a stark reminder that the threat was bigger than just a local confrontation. It involved calculated sabotage, and lives were at stake. Over the next few days, federal agents interviewed us, piecing together what happened and confirming the militia's plans to disrupt critical operations in the area. The fake cops were just pawns in a larger scheme, their false badges a dangerous disguise hiding true intentions. It made me realize how easily a peaceful community could be pulled into chaos by those who refused to respect the law. Through it all, I felt proud that my ranch became a front line for truth and safety, even if unintentionally. It also reminded me of the importance of vigilance and standing up when something doesn't feel right. No matter how isolated or small a place might seem, the ripple effects of conflict can reach anywhere. As the helicopters disappeared over the ridge, I stood at the fence, thinking about how quickly things changed, how ordinary moments can turn into extraordinary stories. The fight wasn't over, But for now, the skies above my ranch were calm again. And in that quiet, I found a moment of peace, ready for whatever might come next. This story is a reminder that truth, courage, and community matter even when faced with unexpected threats. Thanks for listening.